recording. Wait a sec.
Recording in progress.
Okay, there you go. Okay, nice to see you guys. Welcome to today's session in our 20-day cacao challenge. It's so crazy because we only have very few days left of the challenge. Today is day 17. And it's a beautiful day today. We are being carried by the energy of 13 bats, which I just wrote that in the chat. 13 bats is the name of today's energy. And this energy is really beautiful. I also remind you that it's the end of the trecena today. We came all the way back to 13. There's no such thing as 14, as I mentioned before. So it's not like tomorrow we're going to go to 14E. Tomorrow we're going to go to 1E. And the trecena of E will begin tomorrow. Remember, trecena translates to 13-day cycle. So the 13-day cycle of E will begin tomorrow, which of course we'll talk about that tomorrow, not today. But basically, today is the last day in which we are being carried by the trecena of Kawok. So today is also an excellent day to remember that, to say goodbye to the energy of Kawok that carried us for the last 13 days. I don't know how you felt during this trecena. I don't know how you like the trecena of Kawok, but we're going to talk about that in a second. As usual, we're going to begin by doing a little bit of an invocation or setting up intentions with our cacao. And then we're going to move on to talking about the beautiful energy of bats. So, all right, I'm just going to move the mic away. You can still hear me well, right? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so let's talk about the energy of the trecena of bats. I'm sorry, not the trecena of bats, no, the energy of bats, the trecena of Kawak. Let's talk about the energy of the day, which is the day of bats on the last day of the trecena of Kawak. So today, we're being carried by the energy of bats. The Nawal of bats is the monkey, a really beautiful animal, also with a lot of life lessons, very profound symbolism that is mentioned throughout the Maya tradition. We can observe it, for example, even inside of the Popol Vuh and also in other stories as something that's very significant. Bats is the beautiful energy because it is the first of all the energies. The thing about bats is today is not just the beginning, it's not the last day of Atracena only. Today is actually also the beginning of a new veintena. So remember that the right order for the energies is always starting on bats and it always finishes on Tzi. You, of course, remember that yesterday was Tzi. So today the cycle begins all over again. It's a new 20-day cycle. It starts all over again on the day that is Bats. In the story of creation, as told by the Chilam Balam of Chumayel, when we read it, Bats was the first energy to come into existence during the creation. Bats was the first energy to be created. And then maybe I'll briefly tell you for the Mayans, for example, the Cholquij New Year, interestingly enough, is not on um, 1 bats, as many would think. The Cholquij New Year is on 8 bats because the first day of the creation was 1 bats. But then the creation went through an entire 20-day cycle. It passed through one trecena, actually, but it went through an entire 20-day cycle. So the first energy to exist was bats, but bats ach ish sikin ach mak noch die hashka wok ach pui mosh ika kavalkat kan kemekiech kanil toch and see did not exist yet. Only bats existed. And then the day after that, the second day of creation was 2 then 3 and etc. all the way until it got to 7 That was like the full 20-day cycle. When it starts in on 1 bat, the ventana finishes in 7 And so the first day of creation, where all of the energies already existed, was the day after 7 which is 8 bats. So the day that you see in the Cholquij calendar that it is 8 bats, you will know that's the Mayan New Year, specifically for the Cholquij calendar. It's a day that's super celebrated. One time something cool happened, which is that happened during the challenge, actually. We were together for a Mayan New Year. Like, I can't remember, like 2 or 3 challenges ago. And it's really beautiful. But bats, as you can see, is a day that's really celebrated. For example, there's another day in the Maya tradition that we celebrate women. It's the Day of Women, and that's 9 bats, for example. So bats brings a lot of celebrations with it because of how sacred it is. It brings a lot of like important things to it. So bats is the beginning, the first day of creation. In that way, today is the day for new beginnings, is the day to start again, is the day to get rid of the old and start with the new, welcome the new, welcome a new cycle. It's beautiful that in this very specific case of today is actually the perfect day to close the old cycle because it's the last day of the trecena. So we're saying goodbye to whatever happened for the last 13 days and welcoming a new energy very soon, starting all over again with wish us luck. Let's see how it goes with basically, you know, it's a really beautiful energy because it's the one of new beginnings. Bats is not only the monkey, but it is also represented by the thread that you use for like weaving and stuff like that. And so bats is considered to be the thread that weaved together all of existence, that weave together time, space, existence, reality. Bats is the truly, it's the creator of the things, is the one that weaved everything together. When we look at the weaving, oh my God, I'm so sad I don't have one with me actually. I would love to show it to you, but just, I don't know. Does it come out if you just Google it? Let me see. Petate. Yeah, it comes out. So just go ahead and just Google petate. Wait a second. Petate. Yeah. You just Google petate. I don't know if there's a great translation for the word petate in English, but as you can see, it's like a weaving made out of um some plant. I forgot what plant it is right now, but the dried leaves of a very specific plant. And if you're looking at the photos of it on Google right now, I don't know, maybe you can see that it's used for different things. It can be used like as a mat for sitting on it, as a curtain. It's also used a lot in like Mayan fire ceremonies where you put the materials on it or people can sit on it. It's just very traditional petates, and you see them all over the Maya tradition, and they have so many different uses. But when we look at petates, for example, if you look at the whole thing, if you look at one image of one fully finished petate, not an image where they're weaving it, but the fully finished petate, you would not know where's the beginning or where is the end, right? You just look at the whole thing and you don't know where the weaver started weaving, like where did it start or where did it end, right? So in a sense, the petate is a representation of like, oh, thank you so much. Somebody just told me it's the fibers of the palm that they use to weave the petate. And so basically, when you look at it, it's like a representation or a symbol for like literally existence, life, the universe, and everything. Like it is like, where's the beginning and where is the end? You just look at the entire weaving. And the thing is, when you look at the petate, if you look at it before it's been woven, you'll see that the fibers of the palm were all separate from each other, right? And then, like, all these individual things, the weaver came and put them together to create one big thing where you cannot even appreciate almost the individual things anymore, even though it's made out of individual things. The individual things were woven together to create one big thing. And in that sense, the petate represents the same, is a reflection of existence. For example, the Popol Vuh is very significant here, because did you know that pop means petate? Buch means book. Popol Vuh literally translates to the book of the petate. There's different translations for Popol Vuh. Some people call it like the book of the council, the book of the people, like many different things. But if you translate the actual words, pop, yeah, is petate, and buch is book. So the book of the petate, or the book of the weaving that represents all of existence, right? And so in that sense, Bats is the one that reminds us of what existence is like, right? It's made out of all these things that are like these individual things, but all of those things play together a role where they come together to create existence. This is what we've been talking about all this time. Like, you can't, the water is sacred because you could not live without the water. The water could live without you, but you could not live without the water. The air is sacred because you could not live without the air. The earth is sacred because you cannot live without the earth. The plants are sacred. The bees are sacred because you cannot live without the bees, for example, you know. The planet, the actual rock that we're floating on, is sacred because you cannot live. We would literally not exist without it. But also in that way, that would not exist if there was no solar system, right? Like, we would not, the earth could not be without the sun. It could not be without the moon. It could not be without the solar system, but the solar system could not be without the galaxy. So in that way, in the Maya tradition, everything is sacred, because there's not such a thing as an existence where the only thing that's necessary in that existence is water, or the only part of that existence that is necessary are bees, or the only part of that existence that is necessary are plants, or the only part is the sun. Like, the only important thing is the sun, or the only important thing is the moon, or the only important thing is the solar system. There's no such thing as an existence where there's only one thing that is important. Everything is sacred, everything's important. So in that way, it's like everything in existence is one of the pieces of palm that are used to weave it together, that individually mean not very much, but when woven, interwoven together to create the pop, the petate, create the universe, create life, create existence, create everything. And in that way, that's like where we reside, right? Within that existence that Bats created. Bats is the thread that wove together time, space, existence, reality, everything that we experience, see, feel around us right now. And so Bats is the energy of the creator, of the creation, of the literal weaving of the creation that is this existence. So if we make it very mundane and simplify it for how small we are as human beings, what's like the one thing that we do that imitates the ability to create things that don't yet exist? The Mayans connected it very much to art, because art is the way in which humans express things that don't yet exist, like bring things that did not exist before into existence. So in that way, art imitates the act of doing what Bats does, which is bringing things into existence that did not yet exist before. So today is the day of the artist. Today is the day to heal through art. Today is the day to boost our creativity via art, whatever art, whether that's painting, whether that's playing music, singing, dancing, theater, photography, whatever it is. And in that way, I don't know if you remember the story I was telling you with my cousin who was doing the research for this book on dance. And then she was telling the story of how when she was asking Anarkij about like, the history of dance and everything, he told her, well, dance is the thing that human beings do to imitate existence the most because dance imitates movement, and movement and vibration is the basis of all of this existence. Because at a very micro level, that's what's happening. Everything that exists vibrates, everything is energy and whatnot. So dance, he said, is like a way of imitating existence, or of remembering the basis of existence. And so in that way, we already see how the Mayans believe that art is kind of like every form of art is a way to imitate existence, is the ability to have something in our heads that does not yet exist, and to bring it into reality, like a painter does, right? They look at a blank canvas and they imagine something in their head that doesn't yet exist, and then they bring it into reality, or a sculpture, right? Or a book or a theater play that you wrote. You brought a story into life that didn't exist before, like via words, via paint, via different things. So today would be an excellent day for all of us, whether we're artists or not, to still do some form of art, to still look for ways to express our creativity, to dance, to shake our bodies, to play music, to do things that are going to boost our creativity. Because Bats is the one out of the 20 energies that teaches us about the importance of creativity, about the importance of being like creators. And in that way, that brings me to the next topic, which is, oh no, actually, before I go to the next topic, I'll mention one more thing about art, which is we can see it in the Popol Vuh, in the story of Hun Bats, an emphasis on Hun Bats. Hun means one, right? So one Bats. And Hun Choen. You know who those guys are? They're the half siblings of yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I'm not remembering this wrong. They're the half siblings of Hunahpu and Xbalamque, the hero twins. So why am I forgetting this story? I know it by heart. So basically, the when you remember the story of like how Princess Ishki gets pregnant because Hunahpu, who's now the head of a squash tree, the morro tree, which is where the jicaras come from, his head after Hunahpu dies, in Xibalbá, his head, long story, makes it to a morro tree, and then they can never find his head again because they cannot tell it apart from all the other squash. And so he's just like there with his head on the morro tree, and that's why jicaras are sacred, because it's like um, it reminds us of that story every time we drink medicine from jicaras, like a reminder of the lessons of Hunhunahpum. And then Ishkik is really curious about this. She's like, oh, I've heard the legend of Hunhunahpu, whose head is in the morro tree. I'm going to go look for the morro tree. And then she goes and she looks and she finds it. And then the head of him starts speaking to her. And he's like, come closer, give me your hand. She gives him her hand. He spits on it. And all of a sudden she's pregnant with the hero twins. And then she has to go to grandmother Ishmukane's house. And she has to be like, I'm pregnant with your grandchildren. But she's like, what are you talking about? Both of my sons are dead. How could you be pregnant with my grandchildren? Obviously, you're a scammer, you're a liar. And then she has to go through some trials to convince grandmother Ishmukane that actually these are her grandchildren. But then they're born. And Ishmukane and Hunahpu and Shbalamke, no, I'm sorry, Ishkik, Hunahpu, and Shbalamke, so the hero twins and their mom are not treated super well all the time by the rest of the family. Like Ishmukane still doesn't treat them super well. And there's this other siblings, half siblings, Hunbats and Hunchoen, and they are actually 100% like part of the family, let's say. So they're always like treating the hero twins a little bit bad. They're like, oh, you're only our half brother. It's like you're not, like they're always bullying and grandmother Ishmukani always treats, I feel like that's at least my feeling. She always treats Hunbats and Hunchoen better than she treats, Hunahpu and Shbalamke. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't confuse you with all the names. But basically, you know, Hunbat and Hunchoen are the first time in the Popol Vuh that we see art being mentioned, because Grandmother Shmukana is so proud of them because they're the great artists. So they spend all their days playing the flute and playing the instruments and making music and dancing and making art. And they're so artistic and so cool and whatnot. And like their grandma is proud of that. They're like, yeah, we're the best artists. We're so cool, you know? And but then one of their trials is that they get tricked by their siblings one time, are kind of, I feel like, fed up with them because of all the bullying and stuff. And then one of their trials is like that they get turned into monkeys, and the Nawal of Bats is the monkey, as you remember. And they went from being like great artists who were so well respected by their community for their art to being monkeys, and they're like funny monkeys. So nobody takes them seriously anymore. And that's like their curse, to not be taken seriously anymore. So we start to see like the mention of some important things about bats, because one of their names is Hunbats. Then we see the monkeys, which is the Nawal of bats. And it's funny because we were doing the book club in the Mind Wisdom Project team at some point, and we were laughing about Hunbat and Hunchoen because I was telling them I love the theater, as you know, and it was like always my passion in life, and so I was always like for fun just being part of the theater and stuff. And I met a lot of artists because of that, and I was telling them artists are have such a big ego sometimes. Is it reminded me of the story of like Hunbats and Hunchoen, who were like, oh, we're so cool, we're artists, you know. And it was kind of funny, but like we see the Shivalba in that, where they get almost like punished for that and be made to not be taken seriously anymore, you know, for having like this like big ego and whatnot. So they get like slapped by Shivalba for kind of like doing that, you know, and so for being too egocentric and thinking they're cooler than everybody else and whatnot. So it has some like interesting teachings, this story. So okay, let me have a sip of cacao. Mm. Oh, it tasted so good. You know how sometimes cacao just hits right? So that just hit right. So basically, um, um, that's like the first time we see being art mentioned is in combination with bats and in combination with the Nawal of bats. So that brings me to the next topic. The next topic is the weavers. You know how I mentioned that the thread is like the biggest representation of bats, the thread that you use for weaving? Have you ever seen like the Mayan weavers? Google them if you haven't seen them. Also, like Google Mayan weavers, and you'll probably find like at least some images and maybe even some cool videos of them and how they weave. It's beautiful. It's an ancient art. It's very ancient, actually. Weavings, there's like a misconception in Guatemala, um, where people think that the Mayans started wearing their attire when the Spanish arrived, that was like imposed on them by the Spanish. This is not true. The Mayans already were weaving and having their own attire, like before the Spanish were here. The thing is that depending on the region where they lived, sometimes the women would be naked on the top because there was no taboo on that. And there's areas of Guatemala that are very warm, like Alta Verapaz. But then, you know, so the women would sometimes when it was hot would just not wear a shirt, or they had like shirts that were open on the side so you could see the breasts, which was not bad here. You know, it was not seen as like a bad thing or as a taboo thing or as a bad thing. And the Spanish were shocked by this. They were like, no, you have to cover them all up, you know. But one thing the Mayans did do is get even more intentional about writing their own story in the clothing. As soon as they saw that their Spanish were trying to destroy their history and everything, they started to weave their history into their clothing. And that's something that you can see in Guatemala today. All of the huipiles, all of the different pieces of Mayan attire have the history of the Mayans literally written on their clothing, the history of their own nation, of their own tradition, of the symbols of the things that are sacred for them and everything are literally depicted in their clothes as a way that they don't forget. Because they were worried, of course, that they might forget. So they were like, what do we, how can we preserve this? And luckily the oral tradition was the key to that. But that's something that I find so beautiful about like the clothing and the attire here, that it tells the story. And in the ancient times, everybody would weave their own clothes. Honestly, today, a lot of people still weave their own clothes. Unfortunately, this is getting lost. Like, if you can support weavers, do please support weavers, because recently in Guatemala, I forgot where it's from. Like, I don't know, this Chinese factory thing is like so crazy. Started making the huipiles, but like by machine. And you, if when you look at them close, you can tell that there's this new trend of huipiles that just came, and they're so much cheaper, obviously, because they're just made in a factory. And some people started changing their huipiles for this, and like in selling those huipiles instead of the huipiles, because one huipil can take 2, 3, up to like 4 months to weave one huipil. And then that's why if you're ever in Guatemala and you're at like an artisanal market and you want to buy one, they're like, yeah, it's $400 or $500. And you might think, oh, that's expensive, but really they're still underpricing it, because they're charging you $500 for 4 months worth of like their work, actually. And and basically, it's like something that is slowly, super tragically getting lost. And so if you're ever here, buy weavings, please, and go support the weavers, so that they can continue to survive and make a living out of doing this, so that part of the tradition does not get lost. But anyways, that's not what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about is what those weavings represent, right? And so what those weavings represent is that the ability to have like is the same thing as I was saying with the petate, the ability to have a thread, which is like this individual thing, and out of it make something beautiful, make uh, I wish I always had like things around me so I could show it to you, but like to have a huipil, to have like a corte, you can make like, like a beautiful um cloth, or whatever, you can make so many different things with the weavings. Like what the weavers do is truly an art, right? And it's the same representation of bots repeating itself again, like art creating something from nothing, the petate creating something from nothing, weaving, taking something like threads and creating something where nothing existed yet, right? And so, as I mentioned, the Mayan weavers spend literally months in creating one piece. I'll tell you one thing though, that piece will last forever. Like, I know women who wear the huipiles that their grandmothers used to wear, or their great grandmothers used to wear, like, and they look new. Like, they won't deteriorate. They're such high quality. Like, the paint won't deteriorate. Like, the huipil itself won't deteriorate. They look new. Like, sometimes you find this super super old huipiles that are like 100, 150 years old, and they look in such good condition. They're so good, people can still wear them. They're ancient and it's beautiful. So it's like also it's also almost like a no waste kind of thing in a sense, because like the fashion industry nowadays is also not so great, but I'm not going to get into one of my other rants right now. So but like wearing something that can last generations it does have a really positive impact on the environment. And so anyways, basically the idea is that they go ahead and they create something where nothing existed yet. And I was having a conversation with a woman once, and she was like telling me I could never be a weaver. And I was like, well, why? And she was like, oh, because I know some weavers. I have some friends who are weavers, and I always ask them, how do you not go crazy? She's like, sometimes they receive the threads and they're a big ball of threads and they're all tangled up. they're different colors, they're all tangled up, and they have to sit there and they have to untangle. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. And then I saw it. I was visiting Tata Alberto. I think my niece was there too. I don't know if she remembers. I was visiting Tata Alberto, and and we were oh yeah, we were recording videos for the journey, so it took all day long to do this. We were sitting there, we were taking breaks in between, we took advantage that we were with him, and we were asking him about our Mayan energies. I was like, tell me more about Can. And we were just like spending from morning to like the afternoon with them, and the entire time we were there, we could see his wife sitting there and she was untangling some thread from morning to the after. She was just like, it's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm gonna start weaving soon. And I was like, but you've been doing this for like 5 hours straight. I was like, this is kind of crazy. When are you gonna be able to start weaving? And she's like, I just need to untangle it first. So it requires a lot of patience, but at the same time, it has a lot of symbolism because it's the act of untangling that we talked kind of similarly about during the day that was Kat. I don't know if you remember that. Mm. Bats also has something similar in it, which is the act of being able to untangle things. Why? I don't know. You guys probably never made a Mayan weaving before, but something that you probably have done before is like sewn something up. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. But if you know something break, your pants break, and now you have to sew them up to fix them or something. You know how when you're sewing up, um, the sometimes if the thread has a knot and is tangled up, like it won't, if you pull it, just won't pass through the fabric, right? And so like you can pull as hard as you want, but it's just like not going to pass through the fabric, the part of it that's tangled up. So you have to just like stop for a moment. Super annoying, but you have to figure it out. You have to like untangle the knot, and then you can keep on sewing. And same thing, obviously the weavers can't weave if their threads are all tangled up. Like they need to make sure the threads are perfect, the threads are straight, the threads are not full of knots before they start, you know, weaving, because otherwise that would mess up the entire weaving naturally. So they spend a lot of time, a crazy amount of time, if you ask me, untangling before they actually you know, get to weaving, right? And so basically, the idea is that that's a metaphor in life that Bats teaches us for how do we want to weave our own life. How do we, my dad always said, you are, whether you know it or whether you don't know it, you are the creator of your personal reality. You are the bats in your own existence. You're the narrator, the creator, the one who weaves together through every action, every thread that you put together, the existence that you want. And the beauty of it is you can be like an artist, you can be like a bats in that sense, in putting together your own existence. It does not exist yet. You can decide what you're gonna put into it, what art you're gonna make from your own life, what do you want that creation to look like? And so my dad always said, you are creating like your own reality. But what happens if you're like the thread, right? And you're all tangled up full of knots. Whatever goals you have, whatever projects you want to build, whatever relationships you want to build are going to get stuck like bats if the threads are all tangled up and full of knots. Like you're going to try to start weaving your business idea or your project or your new relationship or whatever it is, and then the thread is just not going to come through like the fabric if you haven't taken the time to first untangle yourself before you start creating the life that you want, to weave the life that you want. And so Bat is the one that teaches us that before you can start creating without the limitations, of getting stuck, if you want to start creating like even the coolest, craziest things that you want to imagine, you have to first untangle, because otherwise it's kind of pointless. You're going to start walking the path and you're going to get stuck and you're just not going to pass through because of all of the knots that you have. I think that you can go as far like as your mind allows you to. And your mind will allow you to go as far as you have developed your mind. I've really experienced this in my life so many times where like I kind of overcome a mental blockage once and then it never happens again. Like I'm able to start achieving some things that I never thought I could achieve before, but before I couldn't do it because I had this mental blockage. But then I worked on myself a lot so that I could overcome that. And then now it's all of a sudden that thing that seemed like a really big thing. Now it's actually easy to achieve because I developed myself enough that I can achieve that things. It's like almost like I untied my own knot in this sense, like with bats. But all of you know, the fears, the traumas, all of the mental blockages, all of those different things represent like knots in the thread that you are. You are a thread. And those knots are all of all of the blockages that you have. And so you have to, before you can start using yourself to weave or to create whatever it is you want to create, you have to untangle yourself. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck. And that's what happens to bats people. Uh, they are, they don't know it. Bats people are, they're so funny because basically every time I meet a person from any other energy, it's so funny. I'm like, oh, you're a Tihash. Then you're like this and this and that. And people are like, oh, yeah, that's exactly how I am. Or you're Gek. And you're like this and this and that. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's so me. How crazy. How do you know that? And I'm like, you're bats. And I'm like, oh, you're like, so you have so much potential. You're creative, you're a creator, you're artistic. And they're like, no, I think you're wrong. You're tripping. That's not me. I'm not like that. They're the only ones that never identified to who they actually literally are. Is the weirdest thing. That is who Bats is. But I'm like, you could be an artist. They're like, man, me, no, I'm not creative at all. You could achieve so many things. They're like, me, what? I can't achieve many. Like, what are you talking about? I think you got them all right, but this one you got it wrong. So it's so funny and weird, but also a little frustrating with them because it's like they I'm jealous of them, honestly. And we should all be probably, because if there's one energy that has so much potential to achieve the coolest, craziest things, it's probably bats. Bats has the coolest skill of all, if you ask me. Because you know how we all have like, a cabal can tell the future in dreams, and that's cool, of course, or Emosh has like a really great intuition and some like cool spiritual gifts, or you know, Khan is really good at reading the energy around them, or like I don't know, I can't think of anyone else right now, but Ahpu are super strong, they're like warriors and whatnot. So each energy has like their own talent. Get are great with herbal medicine. They can be healers or doctors if they want to. So every energy has like a set of talents that it has. And I'm so jealous of the bats talent because it's the coolest talent. And that's why I'm so frustrated at bats people, because they're the ones who wasted the most quite often. Bats is not like a cabal or who are really good at like attracting what already exists. Like a cabal are great at manifestation, for example. They think of something and one day later, that thing starts showing up for them everywhere they go. They just said, oh, I want a new computer. And then everybody starts trying to sell them a new computer. It's like they just like attract whatever it is they want. Same thing with Gan, same thing with some energies. They are able to attract what already exists. Bats, no, they have something so much cooler than that. They're able to create what does not yet exist. They don't need to attract what already is in existence because they're able to create things that nobody else could imagine. And now I'm not even talking only about art or something like that anymore. I'm talking about anything. They can create anything, especially now after the 13 Vaktun. Are you joking? That's what this cycle. Um, By the way, 2012 was never the end of the world. The Mayans never said that. By the way, that was just a like great thing that people thought, oh, doomsday story. People love that. Let's like spread that super mega false information. But something did happen on the 21st of December of 2012, which is we changed cycles. The Mayan calendar is so perfect, we have unique days every single day. Like in the Gregorian calendar, we have unique days for 365 days. Like if today is the 19th of November, in 1 year from now, that day will repeat itself. It'll be the 19th of November again, right? And then 1 year later, it'll be the 19th of November again. Okay, in the Mayan calendar, a unique day only repeats itself every 5,200 years. So basically, what happened, to put it in very simple words, we completed a cycle of 13 different Bactunes, super significant. The number 13 is really sacred for the Mayans. 13 Bactunes together, if you do the math, are 5,200 years. And now, in like right after the 21st of December 2012, it started again from zero, the cycle. And that's super significant. Imagine how relevant that a trecena is, or the energy of the day is. So, of course, like a change in cycle of so many thousands of years, that's like, it's super relevant. It changes the energy a lot. That's why the first 13 years, which is until 2025, are kind of crazy because, oh my God, I'm changing topics so hard right now, but this is probably interesting, so I'll share it anyways. So basically, the in the Mayan world, you're a child until you turn 13. You're like a child, and a child is not fully developed yet, so a child can throw temper tantrums, or a child can be not super mature or stuff like that. And that's my dad always said since I was a kid, the first 13 years of the 13 Bactun from 2012 to 2025 are going to be wild because everybody's going to behave like a kid. You're going to have a lot of politicians who behave like children. Everybody's going to be throwing temper tantrums like children would, And then I was like listening to that my whole life, and then it happened, and I was like, oh, he was right. Definitely. So it comes with like a big shift, comes a lot of intensity. So that's why everybody's just freaking out for the last 13 years. I don't know if you've kind of noticed that everybody's just freaking out for 13 years straight. But basically, that's it's just part of how it is. But I'm gonna stop now. I would love to keep telling you this for 20 more minutes, but I'm gonna stop now because I have like all the prophecies of what will happen. Yeah, some are not so great actually, but whatever. So the point is that basically oh yeah, the reason I was saying even more now for bots, they can be the creators of their own reality, is because what the cycle of the 13 Baktun brought is also a new understanding for human beings. So my dad always explained to me that there's been like 5 important cycles for humanity, and they call those 5 cycles the 5 suns. And when we entered the 13 Baktun, we entered the 5th sun, the Hov Ahau. And that's why the cacao is called 5th element cacao, by the way, just so you know, because of that teaching. So the 5th element is what comes into play. For the Mayans, there's no 4 elements, but there's 5 elements: the water, the earth, the what did I say? The air and the fire. I don't know why that was so hard. And then the 5th one is like many different teachers call it different things. Some call it the spirit, some call it movement, some call it's the ether, is like something ethereal that you can't describe. It's just like the energy that's all around existence and whatnot. And every one of the 4 cycles was connected to one of those 4 elements. The four cycles that came before this. Now we enter the 5th cycle. The 5th cycle is connected to the 5th element. And if the 5th element is that thing that's more ethereal, is like the spirit that connects everything together, then human beings also in this 5th cycle start going through a time of more like connecting to their spiritual side, learning more about like breaking out of reality a little bit. And it's so interesting. My dad was right all along. I mean, I've been hearing this since I'm a kid, but he was like, oh, all of a sudden people will be really interested in spirituality all of a sudden after 2012. And he was like, all of a sudden people are going to also start having this like understanding more like at a super large scale that the universe is more than this like very physical, like existence is more than this physical manifestation that we see. Is going to become more common knowledge that the brain can only perceive like a very small part of existence. Certain new sciences will emerge that are proving things that are going to bend our mind a little, like quantum physics and stuff like that. And it all became really hip exactly at that time, and he said, so it's going to be a very difficult shift in everything, but it's a shift that's trying to get us to understand one new skill and to develop one new skill that we have as human beings. And that skill is the skill of bots, to be honest with you. And what do I mean by that? He said like the fourth cycle was the one where we were supposed to learn that we're not so physical and so logical as we think, because the third cycle was the one that taught us reason, it taught us science, he says. The fourth cycle was the one that taught us, okay, reason, science, the brain is important, but you know what else is kind of cool? If I have an aim, if I start thinking about something, I can attract that into my life. So the fourth cycle was the one that was supposed to teach us that we can attract things into our life, that whatever we aim at is what we're able to see and we're able to like manifest into our lives. And the fifth cycle is the one where we go through one more barrier and we realize we're able to just, he always made this expression, I'm copying it. He always put his hand like this. He's like, there's nothing here. Let me create it, like to create something that doesn't yet exist. So if that's always been true for bats in the cycle, it should be even more true that they're the ones who are able to create the things that don't yet actually exist, to close their eyes, imagine something, open their eyes, get to work and create that something that doesn't yet exist. What's the problem? The problem is that they'll never believe that. I can say that right now. And they're like, what is she talking about, bots? Are you sure she's not getting confused? She's like, that's not me. I can't do that. No, that's the thing, bots are like, I'm not an artist. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. The problem that bots has is all of their nuts. That's their problem. They're not especially, imagine a big pile of threads. And now imagine them all tangled up together, That is an overwhelming image to picture, obviously, right? But sometimes that's how their mind can look like. That's how their brain can look like. All the threads all tangled up together, full of knots. Bats really needs to master their own mind. And for that, they need to start untangling. And as the example I gave you with the necklace the other day, you can't just pull it. You can't just take scissors and cut it, because then you also destroy the threads. You cannot use them for weaving anymore. What you have to do is you have to sit down, take a look at the entanglement, and just little by little start cleaning the house, start undoing the knots, start untying everything. And like Adalberto's wife, who spent the entire day just doing that before she could get to weaving. When bats people are able to do that, that's when they unlock this super crazy cool parts of themselves, which are, it turns out they're way more creative than they realize, because obviously they have the energy of the creation inside of them. It turns out that they can achieve all these amazing things that they have no idea right now that they can achieve. They have so much potential. The problem is that bats, when they're tangled up, they put one foot on the path and one foot on the exit door just in case, with their goals and their things they want in life. They run into the first obstacle, and bats has one issue, which is they have this little voice in the back of their head, this like just the voice of self-sabotage. So they just like, and self-doubt, so they have this little voice always with them. That is part of the entanglement, by the way. It can go away with the entanglement. When the entanglement goes away, the voice goes away. But bats is like, they're like, that's what I want. Okay, I have to walk this path to get to where I want to. And then they start walking the path and they run into the first obstacle. And instead of seeing the first obstacle for what it is, which is completely normal and natural. Everybody knows that no matter what path you're walking in life, there will always be obstacles, regardless of what your goal is. You'll always run into obstacles. They're normal. You just have to be good at like, you know, going around them or getting and or pushing them out of the way or whatever. But there's always obstacles. Even if you're not doing something that interesting or special, you'll still run into obstacles regardless of what you do. So Bats is like, I want this. They start walking. First obstacle comes in. Instead of saying, oh, the first obstacle, let me get it out of the way so I can keep walking. They're like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew I was going to fail. I already failed. I just started walking and I already failed. They're like, I knew I shouldn't have. Sorry, my dog. I knew I shouldn't have walked this path. I already knew I was going to fail. I already knew I was not good enough. Why did I think I could do this? Oh my goodness. Good thing I had my second foot on the exit door instead of the path. Let me take the exit door immediately. I knew it. And so, or, if we're lucky and they get through the first obstacle, by the time they find the second, third, or fourth obstacle, that's when they do that. And so, Bats, you guys, come on, Bats, you have to stop doing this. This is not good. They have to learn that they have so much potential. They're natural strategists. They're very smart people, super intelligent, so much potential. Spiritually, believe it, but super developed. They're also not the first ones to believe that, but spiritually super developed, super creative, super charming, by the way. Everybody trusts Bats. I don't know what it is, but everybody just knows they have a good heart and everybody naturally trusts Bats. They have all the skill set that they would need in order to achieve anything they set their mind to. The only problem is the entanglement in their own mind, and that entanglement comes with that little voice in their head that tells them, you can't do this, you can't do that, or you're not good enough for this, you're not good enough for that. So today is a day to start untying all of the knots, to start untangling all of the entanglement, and to just accept the little voice in your head, but just don't pay attention to it. Just let it mind its own business. Just don't mess with it or have conversations with it. We all have that little voice in a way, in one way or another, obviously, not just Bats people. But a question I started to ask to myself, from like my personal little voice every time I'm like, oh no, now I can't achieve this because, self-sabotage and whatever, I don't deserve this, or I'm not good enough, or blah, 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 is like, is what I owe to my fear bigger than what I owe to myself? That's the question that I started asking myself every time that little fearful voice started popping up. Is what I owe to that little voice bigger than what I owe to myself, bigger than what I owe to the people who love me, bigger than what I owe to those who depend on me, to the people around me? And their answer is obviously always no, of course it's not. What I owe to my fear is not bigger than what I owe to myself or to those who love me or to those who I love or all of that stuff. And it's not like, we can always get rid of that little voice, but maybe learn how to interact with the little voice a little bit better. And by that, I mean, just don't interact with it. Let it mind its own business and just do your own thing separate from that little voice, So, so, no, last effects of the cold. So basically, that's what Bats represents: is the ability to be the creator, is the ability to create, is the ability to weave together the life that we want. But of course, every strength comes with its weakness. What's the strength of a thread? The coolest strength. It can create literally anything it wants, anything that doesn't yet exist. But what's the weakness of a thread? It gets tangled up easily. If it doesn't keep untangling itself, it gets tangled up easily. And Bats people are like threads in that sense. But I think all of us can learn from the lessons of Bats people. I think they're very relevant for all of us. So, okay, I'm gonna start explaining why today we only drink cacao by itself. Too sacred to mix it with anything else this day. Is like Kame, I told you, like, it's the day of the ancestors. We don't want any interruptions with connecting from that. So same with bats. It's too sacred this day to be distracted by any other things. We just want to have like a direct relationship with cacao itself. And cacao in the Mayan tradition is medicinal. Mm, It is a medicine. In the ancient Mayan world, it was sacred. So it had so much value. It was seen as a currency. Like I love what the Mayans thought had value, something that is going to help you heal yourself, spiritually develop, bring nutrition to your body, bring peace to your mind, bring biodiversity and good agriculture. That is more valuable than a piece of metal or a piece of paper or a thing that doesn't exist inside of a computer, that actually has real life value, and so the fact that the Mayans turned that into part of their currency is already very telling of what kind of people the ancient Mayans were, where they thought value lies in. When people hear, oh, cacao as a currency, they think, oh, why? It's something so invaluable. But really, you know, it's not something so invaluable. It's something so profoundly valuable because it represents spirituality, it represents healing, it represents health, it represents biodiversity, it represents culture. What has more value than all of those things? The Mayans were like, gold, nah. Cacao, yes. So basically it's just like very profound in that sense. And it's sacred. It's a sacred beverage, can't be missing at any party. Every birthday, every marriage, every sacred celebration, that's the beverage that will be served. And it is used in that sense as something that can have like a lot of medicinal powers. That basically, well, okay, if we get like very specific about it, cacao, some of the compounds in cacao have the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. Like in addition to being super nutritious, having a lot of antioxidants, having a lot of really great components that are good for your physical body, it's also good for your brain as well, because cacao can cross the blood-brain barrier, some of its compounds, and those compounds are able to regulate certain neurotransmitters of the brain, including serotonin, dopamine. Serotonin is like the happiness one. It like is in charge for long-term happiness. Dopamine, it gives you pleasure like immediately, Anandamide, that's the one that gives you like the runner's high, after you exercise, how you feel like so good. That's anandamide. That makes you feel like, yes, I've achieved something great. I feel so happy and proud of myself. Phenylethylamine, which has often been referred to as the love molecule because it makes you feel that feeling that you feel when you're falling in love, So cacao basically has this like big list of things that it can do inside of your brain that makes it a natural antidepressant. It makes it naturally act against anxiety. It makes it naturally act against certain things that are like difficult emotions or heaviness or being sad. It can make you happy on a sad day. It can make you feel good. But that being said, cacao is still a medicine. And for the Mayans, medicine is not something that is so similar to the way in which we see medicine in the modern world. I think modern science, modern medicine are amazing. They also have so much potential and have solved so many problems. But something I don't appreciate that much is what I was telling you during the hash and whatnot, where like, we're just not sometimes this modern way of medicine doesn't focus on prevention. It doesn't focus on truly finding the root cause for many illnesses. It only focuses on the physical. It doesn't focus on the four bodies. It only focuses on one of the four bodies, the physical, but it doesn't focus on the mental, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual aspects, to why sometimes stress or the lifestyle that you live can be the source of illness, the trauma that you experience, like a lot of things. And so in the Mayan world, medicine and diagnosis is very different than in the Western world, because diagnosis in the Western world is you have diabetes, or you have colon problems, or you have this illness. Here's some chemicals, take them. In the Mayan world, diagnosis looks like, okay, do you really have a physical illness? Is it a physical source? The answer sometimes is yes. Sometimes the source is just purely physical. And then we just have to treat only your body alone, and that's fine. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes, though, is not only physical. Sometimes in the Mayan world, it's emotional, you know? And sometimes it comes from stress, sometimes it comes from anxiety, sometimes it comes from trauma. It's like with Raquel and me and my nervous system. She was like, if you don't start working on your nervous system, you will get sick one day. And I'm so grateful to her because, probably, no, I'm sure she was right, And so basically, and so basically, in the Mayan world, when they give you medicine, like, okay, for example, Raquel, okay, she told me like the gut blend, right? She has a blend to heal your gut, and the gut's super important, but I'm not even gonna get into why right now because I'm already running out of time. But one of the things that she told me is when she has patients who have gut problems, she always connects the colon with emotional issues. She's like, it would be so rare with somebody who has problems of the colon for it to just be problems of the colon and that's where it ends. She says, like, different parts of the body represent different things. And the colon, she was like, is usually this person is going through a lot of emotional intensity, and going through a lot of stuff emotionally. And that hits you in the gut, right? So she said, what do I give them? I give them herbs that are good for the gut, physically good for the gut, but I also give them herbs that are good for their nervous system so that that can help them regulate their emotions, that are good for their vagus nerve so that they can deal with stress and emotional intensity better. I give them herbs that are known to be good for releasing emotions, emotional healing, regulating anger, regulating sadness, regulating all the emotional distress factors. She's like, that's how I treat my patients. I'm like, oh my goodness, that makes a lot of sense, Raquel. Like it's so you do both the physical, but also like the source of the problem. So what happens? We had it happen in the where we just did that herbal healing immersion thing where we took a bunch of people to Raquel and then one day she just gave us all rue. Big warning, okay? Don't consume rue. You need to know the dosage right. It's very dangerous if you don't know the dosage right. You can only consume it once in a while. So please don't do it. A herbalist, like a true expert, would have to be the one who tells you how to do it if you were ever to do it. So please don't go experimenting with Rue. Rue's too powerful. Okay, but in the case in which we did it, Raquel was the one who gave us the right dose and everything. And she gave almost everyone room. Everybody was just crying. Like for the next few days, everyone was like, I just remembered that traumatic event that I went through in my life, It's like, oh my God, Rue will just do that to you, It will just take out stuff. It'll make you process things that you didn't even know you needed to process. We were all going through like this emotional stuff from like, 10 years ago, I forgot about that thing. And now I'm realizing how important it is for me to heal that. And everybody was just like crying all for the next 2 or 3 days, basically. But basically, there's herbs, there's medicines that can do that to you. You know what I mean? Again, do not, big warning. I just don't want to be responsible for people experimenting. Do not take rue unless unless you're a herbalist or you have a doctor or a herbalist who can instruct you on how and how often to super, super responsibly take your rue. Rue has big, big contraindications if you don't know how to take it properly. So, and many people don't even know you can consume rue. Actually, that's how people are scared of it because of how strong it is, really. So again, you don't want to do that if you don't know how to properly do it. So, but basically, for the Mayans, medicine is something that it doesn't just put a band-aid on the problem. It's something that if there's a problem, it will find it. It will bring it up because for it to come out, it has to first come up. That's what a teacher told me once many years ago, and I thought it's so beautiful. For it to come out, it has to first come up. And basically, cacao is medicine, which means cacao is not the exception to that. If you have stuff inside of you, if you have sadness, and if you're going through a lot of emotional stuff for the last, today's day 17, that's probably why, because you've been drinking cacao every day. Like sometimes, like I've had Mayan medicine, some simple herbs, And I remember one time a teacher gave me Mayan medicine and I just was like, oh yeah, it's gonna heal me physically. But then I was on the sofa crying for 2 days straight. I was like, life, oh my God, my pain, all this stuff. And I was just letting out all this stuff that I didn't even know that I needed to let out. And I've had people who drink cacao and just have the phenylethylamine and the anandamide, and they're like, I feel so happy right now. I'm ready to go and be super productive and happy today because cacao can make you feel that. But cacao can also make you let out some stuff that might not be so pleasant to look at, but it might need to come out. So cacao can also make you emotional. It can make you release emotions. It can make you look at things that are like painful or difficult to look at. If that's happening, don't worry. Don't think it's strange or don't think it's weird. You probably need that to come out. Of course, I always say, if it's giving you way too intense effects, of course, cancel it, stop it, and either contact a herbalist or your doctor or somebody who can like maybe see why, because it does have some contraindications, as you know. So if it's like making you feel way too bad or something, don't drink cacao, of course, and then maybe dig deeper into why that's happening with cacao to you. Maybe cacao is not good for you, right? Like there's of course exceptions, and some people might not drink cacao for that reason. But in general, as long as it's like in a healthy, manageable way, cacao does bring up stuff, right? So if you're feeling happy these days, awesome. But if you're crying these days, if you're thinking a lot about your life, if you're thinking a lot about like all these things that are difficult to think about, if you're emotional, also awesome, because that's why cacao is a medicine, because it does have the power to do that. Similarly to herbal medicine has the power to do that. Similarly to other medicines, it has the power to actually do that. So that's what's up. That's why today we drink cacao by itself. Cheers. Go become the creator. No, you already are the creator of your personal reality, but be more intentional about the reality that you want to create. If you're full of knots, then start untying the knots, and ask yourself, what do you want to weave in your life? And go express yourself creatively, go express yourself artistically. And I'm pretty sure everybody's gonna go Google like, oh, prophecies of the Mayans are 13 back to now, because I probably never talk about that. But also be careful because there's a lot of misinformation out there in Google. So ask Alina in the community. Sorry, Alina, by the way, I think she's here. But ask Alina in the community. She can tell you more accurate information. So see you guys. See you guys tomorrow. Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye. Have a nice day.